What are the humanities? Why do we need them? In fact, do we need them at all? Welcome to the Virtual Jewel Box, podcast of the Tanner Humanities Center. I'm Scott Black, Director of the Tanner Humanities Center. Last spring, we hosted Mark Matheson on the Virtual Jewel Box to discuss the legacy of Obert Tanner, our founder and namesake. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Jodi Graham to talk with us about the next part of our name and our mission, the humanities. Jodi Graham is Executive Director of Utah Humanities, a formidable force at the heart of our state's public humanities. I'm delighted to welcome her today. Welcome, Jodi.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. I'm happy to be here.
Really glad you're here. Utah Humanities is now celebrating your 50th anniversary. I wanted to ask you to start just by talking a little bit about what a State Humanities Council is, what Utah Humanities does, and tell us about your 50 years.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. So a lot of people don't know that every state and the 6 jurisdictional territories of our country have a State Humanities Council. So there are 56 of us. We are all funded in some part by the National Endowment for the Humanities, which was created in 1965, partly because Congress was determined to get across that democracy demands wisdom of its citizens, and so much money was going towards science and technology at that time that they felt it was important to put some resources toward culture in our country. And so the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities were created at that point. And also so that we would not be, that we would be the masters of our technology and not its unthinking servants. 1965, that was the focus.
Still sounds timely now.
And that's one of the beautiful things about the humanities is they are timeless. There are things that we are grappling with today that we grappled with 50 years ago and 100 years ago and all of those things. So yes, we are Utah's State Humanities Council. We were established in 1975. When we were created, our primary function was really just to award grants. So the National Endowment for the Humanities would give us money, and we would turn around and give it out for projects all over the state of all kinds. And over the past 50 years, we've morphed a little bit. We still offer grants, but we also now do our own programming. So we try to get out to as many places in the state as we can to bring the humanities to places that may not always have opportunities to experience it. Like Salt Lake City is just a wealth of cultural programming, especially with the university up here on the hill. Not every community in the state has that. So it is our mandate to get the humanities out far and wide to as many people as we can in the state. And we do it through our partnerships. We partner with the Tanner Humanities Center. We partner with organizations large and small to reach as many people as we can to make communities a better place. And that's really what we're all about, making the world a better place through the humanities.
That's great. I do want to ask you about the humanities as a thing. It's a strange term for a lot of people. Our associate director has been asked if she works for a humane society with animals. And I also, I'm in the humanities and the academic humanities, and I'm often wondering what we're doing. I mean, why the humanities? It's a strange category. I think there are historical reasons. But how do you explain what the humanities are to people? Culture, I understand. Arts, I understand. Humanities,
Right.
Maybe a little less intuitive to a lot of people.
Well, and I love that you said that you get some confusion because we often have people call to let us know that the neighbor's dog is in distress or coming to us and looking for assistance for someone who maybe is found themselves to be homeless. So humanitarian, humane, we get those things, which actually are all part of the humanities.
Sure.
All the good H words. It's funny. One of my favorite ways to explain the humanities generally actually came from an ad campaign that the University of Utah's College of Humanities did several years ago. And it says, science can tell you how to clone a dinosaur. The humanities can tell you why that might not be a good idea. Right. And so it really is the exploration of everything that's human. So I make the case all the time. If humans are involved, It's the humanities. So it could be something as simple as you go to a movie and you have a conversation with someone about it, to exploring historical texts, to looking at different movements in our country, understanding where we've been, who we are now, and where we want to go. And it's the beautiful challenge as well as opportunity, because they are very broad. They could mean all kinds of things to all kinds of people. And it just depends on what their personal connection to it is, right? So it is hard to describe, but it's like the air we breathe. It's part of life. It's part of who we are.
I really agree with you about that conversation after the movie part in particular. This is what I try to explain to my students in English. This is what we're doing. We're having those conversations after you've just had some kind of experience, trying to understand what just happened better, comparing notes with people, having a discussion and reflecting on what you're doing in your life. That's actually what I think it means to be fully human, to actually lead a self-aware, reflective life. And everything we do offers people occasions to do that, a chance to slow down, think again, and wonder if all those reactive thoughts you're having are actually your thoughts.
Right. And I think where it is magical is when there are points of tension or there are points of disagreement, especially the movie example. There may be something that you see that you really loved and you're really excited about, and you can't wait to talk to someone about it. And their reaction is maybe not the same as yours. And then you have to stop and consider, oh, well, why don't you like it? And what does that mean? And can we still be friends? And of course we can. And I think that's why the humanities are actually so critically important in this moment, where because of COVID and then because of our addiction to our electronic devices, we are finding fewer and fewer opportunities to really talk to each other and to really get down beneath what's on the surface.
Yes.
And that's really where the interaction and the exchange of ideas can happen. You're not going to get that on a social media post.
Right.
You're never going to solve the problems of the world by getting in an argument on Facebook, right?
Yes.
But you may come to a greater understanding and appreciation of something you didn't know about, or you were afraid of, or you were confused about, when you have that human interaction behind it.
Right. Yeah, and it's that friction, that not just having people agree with you or automatically disagree and then that be the end. It's actually asking your friend, asking your partner, did you see the same thing? And if you didn't, can you explain why you think I'm wrong? And having to give reasons may actually open up something you weren't aware of before.
Right. And it just really shines the light on the fact that humans are messy. We are beautiful, glorious, messy creatures, and we are not easily described and we are not easily understood. And so it's really good. Those tensions are really good.
Right.
Good, healthy tension.
Yeah. And the arguments, the complexity, that's actually where things get interesting. That's where things get fun.
Yeah. And
who wants to know how everything works automatically?
Right. And there's complexity and there's nuance and there's context. So it's all of these things that the humanities bring. And it goes into any topic you want to talk about. You can talk about history and a thing happens. Well, that's great. Who did it happen to? Why did it happen? What were the results of it? What led up to it? What have we learned from it? Have we learned anything from it? And you can do that. You can unpack that with so many different things. And that really is the power of it.
So your job is to give people those kinds of experiences through your programs.
Yes, and we do that in a number of different ways, in a number of different formats. And again, because there are different interests and different ways that people connect. And so we want to give as many opportunities as we can so that people can find that hook for themselves and they have the light bulbs go off. And that's that continuing learning and curiosity that we're all hungry for as human beings.
I've been aware of Utah Humanities through the English department in our really strong creative writing program through the Book Festival for decades. It's one of my favorite events in the fall in Salt Lake City. But in my position as director of the Tanner, I've started to learn about all of the amazing things you're doing. I'm also aware of the Clemente program because we had some faculty in my department who work for that. But could you just tell us a little bit about the range of things, Museums on Main Street, Clemente program, the education programs? the literacy and book programs that you do in Utah Humanities.
Yes. And so part of the beauty and part of the challenge about the humanities is they are so broad, and there are a million different directions that we could go with topic areas and delivery mechanisms. But what we have decided to do in this moment is we have sectioned our programming arms off into centers. They're not physical centers, they're thematic centers. And the first is, as you mentioned, the Utah Center for the Book, which is actually the Utah affiliate of the National Center for the Book at the Library of Congress. So that is an official designation, but it also houses all of our literature programming. So that includes the Utah Humanities Book Festival every October. It includes the newly reinvigorated Utah Book Awards, Humanities in the Wild, where you take an author and a scientist and you get audiences out into the great outdoors and to see the intersection between humanities and nature, which is one of my favorite things, are those sort of unexpected connections. The Utah Poetry Festival that happens every April. So Everything Book is under the Utah Center of the Book. We have the Center for Community Heritage, which manages all of our history and museum programming. And that includes Museum on Main Street, which is it's a collaboration with the Smithsonian Institution's Traveling Exhibition Service. I wanted to make sure I got all those words in there. And it is that Smithsonian, the Smithsonian back in Washington, D.C. So the Smithsonian puts together an exhibit. Every 3 years or so, we bring one here. We tour it to small and rural museums throughout the state. And then whoever hosts it does their own local exhibit that tells the local story that goes along with it. We've been doing it for 30 years. Utah actually was one of the key players in getting that whole program started, which is a fun little piece of history. So we do all of that. We do a lot of capacity building with small museums. We have a lot of small to mid-sized museums in our state. Some of them have all volunteer staff, and some of them need help with really basic things like mission, vision, governance. What is the goal of your museum? How do you care for your collections? How do you manage all these things? So we do a lot with museums. The Center for Educational Access does Clemente and Venture. Clemente is a high school humanities course that happens throughout the whole year for juniors and seniors that gives them a taste of what college success could look like. And this course is all for students who would be the first in their families to attend a higher education institution. So it's a bit of a college excitement course, as well as a really rigorous humanities course. It's like, this is what a college classroom would look like. And then they get to know some folks who are actually on college campuses. So if they decide to enroll, they have friendly faces and people there who know what they're all about. And then we have the Center for Local Initiatives, which is where our grants live, and also our community conversations, where we can talk about anything from impacts of COVID to AI to any kind of current topic that could be going on during the day. And then we have special projects, which for, the catch-all for everything that we haven't covered with those other arms of programming. So it's a lot. It's complex. Any one of those centers could really be its own organization, but they all tie together under the mission of making communities stronger through the humanities. So that is the thread that kind of goes through all of our programming. But yeah, it's a lot. I know it's a lot.
It's great. And I think it's really important that you offer people multiple ways to get into this. And of course, it's really important to stress that this is all over the state. Every corner of Utah has benefited from these programs, and they're designed to help communities foster their own conversations, most importantly.
Yes, and that is really for us where we really get excited when a community we can come in and we can help with something, but then they have the tools and the capacity to do it on their own, because what that does is it strengthens our state's cultural infrastructure. And the adage, all boats rise together. We feel like the stronger our state's cultural infrastructure is, the stronger we are as a state. And Utah has a legacy of supporting arts and humanities from its very early days of being established as a state, and also before that with the indigenous populations that were here long before the pioneers came across the plains, and that piece of history. So we have a history of it. It's important to people who live in this state, and we are proud to be able to help make it stronger.
And I've heard you say that the humanities are necessary. They're not a luxury. which it's interesting. I think they're absolutely necessary. I think it's a fundamental part of a good life. It's the way we ask ourselves what a good life is, how to live, and how to live together. But there is something beyond sheer necessity, I think, that's really important to stress. This is the place where you celebrate things, where you come together in ways that you don't have to, where you come together voluntarily and do things that you love to do and that you want to be part of your life. And in those terms, it's not just necessary, or it's what makes human life human, as you said before.
Right. And there was a tagline that I had underneath my email signature during COVID, and it just said, survival is insufficient.
Yes.
Right? We can live. That is fine. But are we alive?
Exactly.
The difference between being alive and living. And I really think, in especially moments where we find ourselves now, especially with our country and the divisions that are happening and maybe our inability to really connect with people in a meaningful way, I honestly believe that humanities are what can save us all. And I say that laughing, but I actually really sincerely mean that. I think that ability to dig a little deeper, to find context and to connect. It's that connection that we seem to be losing. And I think that can be traced back to some of the larger problems that we're having as a society right now. And so I do believe that they are a luxury, but they are also super critical. And if we can answer this call in this moment and to really employ the humanities, I think it can help. I think it can help save a lot of what's going on.
And the fundamental assumption is that if we actually started to talk with each other, we'd recognize in some ways, not every way, but in some ways we have things that we share as human beings and ways to connect across what we imagine are these unbridgeable differences.
Right. And you're a lot less likely to have a deep, visceral, negative reaction to someone that you know.
Right.
And so it's that act of getting to know, which is hard because it's personal, it's one-on-one or in small groups, and it's not broadcast.
Right.
It's intimate in a lot of ways. And to be able to take the time and to be brave enough to take the time and maybe consider that maybe something that you're thinking might not be all that you thought it was.
Right.
And then you get into ideas of where are you getting your information? There's a whole other arm of it to that. But yeah, that's the important thing, because the one thing that we all have in common is that we are all part of this human family.
Yep.
And that is something that is non-negotiable. We are all human. And so in some very basic, visceral level, we are all connected.
And no one has a lock on what it is to be human. And if you think you do, that kind of certainty is part of the problem.
Well, and then introduce AI, and then we go down a totally different rabbit hole. And what really does it mean to be human? And where does human intellect and context, how does that all then mix in with this brave new frontier of technology that never goes back in the box? So how are we going to manage it?
Right. All right. That's a can of worms. Are there AI humanities? There's certainly humanities in AI. Many of my colleagues are thinking about what humanities means in the age of AI, how we teach and also how we relate. But I think fundamentally what you're talking about is a kind of face-to-face time with people and recognizing people in their full humanity, in their complexity, in their nuance, in their depth, in a way that interacting on social media, on our phones, doesn't give us.
Right. And when I've heard that we've never been more connected than we are right now, but we have also never been as lonely, right? And so what are we doing to mitigate that? And that's a lot of what Utah Humanities does, is providing the opportunities for that.
Yep.
It's just come together. And we did, during COVID, we had to switch and do all of our programming virtually, which was okay. And we learned some really good tips and tricks and some definitely more accessible options for folks who maybe couldn't travel that we didn't lose. But it really is where the magic really happens, is that exchange of ideas. When you're sitting in a room with someone, you're seeing what their body language is. You know they're not checking their email and while they're talking to you because, you're physically there instead of behind a screen. And so it was good in the moment as a stopgap, but really that in-person exchange and that connection is really critically important.
Absolutely. And we find that with our program. I think there is a place for virtual programming. It is a kind of accessibility that's very important. On the other hand, so much of what happens at an event, so much that's valuable happens just before or especially just after the event with the follow-up conversations that are much more informal and not part of the actual event. But as you're walking out, talking to people, again, back to the movie example, and comparing notes and then getting to know the person who is sitting next to you and finding out she disagrees with you about what just happened.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly it. And you just can't get that on the screen because it's just it's a different way of communicating, and it's not bad. It's just different.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is something I really care about. As part of what the humanities are is to remember we are embodied. We live in the world fully, not just in our heads and not just on our phones, where everything is reduced to information. There's something much deeper going on when we actually interact with people in ourselves, in our full selves, which means being in the world and actually facing someone in ways that we may not fully be aware of, or we're very aware of. We're not always aware we're aware of them in our thinking.
Well, and you can also see the immediate impact of being in a place or saying a thing. So I come from a time when I was in school, if you wanted to say something mean to somebody, you had to say it to their face and you could see their reaction, right? Or you pass them that nasty little note and then you see how that impacts. But what we've taken, we don't have that anymore. So things can be said and comments can be made, and you just don't see that immediate reaction of how it lands. And that goes for negative as well as positive. Mm-hmm. And so you don't see someone's face light up in a way when something really wonderful happens. So it doesn't always have to be on the negative, but it's that taking up the space in the world, and everything you do has an impact, whether it's impacting a person or impacting the environment or impacting your family or all of those kinds of things. So, no, I absolutely agree.
That's great. And it is really important to see how something lands, which you can't do virtually. Right. Did that work? You try out ideas all the time and you find out if they're good if someone lights up in the face of it.
Well, and then if it's a larger group, it's that phrase, read the room. And
right.
So, and which is really difficult to do on a screen. It's like if you can feel people's eyes are starting to glaze over, or people start getting fidgety, where on a screen, you're just not going to get
Everyone's fidgety.
I know, right? We've all lost our ability to focus beyond like 30 seconds at a time. But
yeah. And I think it's really true that it's easier to hate someone abstractly in your own head. When you actually meet someone, it's actually very hard to hate people because, first of all, they're interesting. Second of all, they're way more complicated than your image of them is if you're not seeing them.
I agree. I absolutely agree. It's fundamentals of being human. It's that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thinking back over 50 years of Utah Humanities, is there anything you want to highlight, either a program or something that you've been executive director since 2018, but I think you've been involved with Utah Humanities for 20 years. Is that right?
Well, yeah. And I actually started in 1996 as the administrative assistant, which was a long time ago, and also really fascinating because I've done a lot of different things for Utah Humanities. And so I've seen it from a bunch of different angles and done all those kinds of things. But really, I think one of the most important things that we do is the awarding of grants, because that really empowers people and organizations where they are to do the things that are important to them. And they can take a whole number of formats and different things, different processes, different ways of delivering. But then they are so proud of the work that they have done and the sense of accomplishment in doing something meaningful in their community. That has been true for 50 years. Just seeing you did this. We helped a little. We gave you a little bit of money, but you made this happen. This is yours. And just to be a part of that and to share a little bit in that, I think is really powerful and really remarkable, and something that I hope we can continue to do for the next 50 years.
That's great. And I think it's so important to remember that these programs are not telling people things. They're allowing people to think for themselves, to decide what they think is important and supporting those initiatives. This is not a place where you go out and tell people, this is what we expect you to do. Quite the opposite. They apply. I've been at the other end. I apply. and say, is this a project that you think would be interesting to enough people to support? And if it is, it touches a lot of people in a very local, decentralized way.
Yes, and people in a community know their community and they know what's important and they know also what might be a little tricky to talk about, which is also good. And it's something that I tell my staff all the time, especially when we get into topics like a couple of years ago with the book festival, we did a whole series of programming on banned books, which depending on who you are, how you think, you may think banning books is a good thing. You may think it's a bad thing. I personally have some very strong feelings and opinions about that. But when Utah Humanities is presenting something about banned books, what I think and feel is no longer important. And I tell my staff all the time, it's not our job to give the answers. It's our job to ask the questions, right? And so I could give answers because, again, I feel very passionately about some of these things, but that's not my job and that's not my place. It's just we will present the questions and then you decide. You come to your own conclusions about it and take away what you will from that. And again, then you might find a point of connection with someone sitting next to you and you may find yourself scooting your chair over a little farther the other direction, right? Because it's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that about you. But yeah, so it's really important that we continue to ask and not prescribe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And hopefully the answers to those questions spark new questions and it keeps going.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Endless creativity.
Jodi, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. Thanks very much for coming on the Virtual Jewel Box.
Thank you so much, Scott.
You've been listening to the Virtual Jewel Box podcast of the Tanner Humanities Center. Our music is Jelly Roll Morton's Perfect Rag. Thanks for joining us.